These are the exact specific steps I used to make my first $10,000 a month in my content business, and to be honest, some of these methods are pretty controversial. So for the past 6 years, I've been blessed to be a full-time content creator, working with some of the top brands in the world on paid projects like Four Seasons, Marriott, MSC Cruises, and many others. But to be honest, the way I got there is very different than most advice you'll probably see on the internet. Actually, a lot of the advice that I've personally seen, maybe you've even seen it yourself, actually kept me stuck and broke for years. And it wasn't until I realized the 4 steps I'm about to share with you in this video that I was finally able to make a full-time career with my content business. I mean, most videos are going to tell you to hack the algorithm and then wait for brands to reach out. And when they don't respond to that, just network with other creators. Now, while some of that stuff definitely works in the long term, it's definitely not the most efficient, especially when you're first starting out. So in this video, I'm going to show you the exact steps that I took to get my first few paid clients, and then hopefully you can use it as a blueprint that you can follow as well. So the first step is just to learn the basics, things like composition, lighting, camera settings, framing, like all that kind of stuff. But there's another basic that is severely undervalued in the creator industry, in my opinion. It's actually something my dad taught me when I was 8 years old. So when I was 8 years old, I got my first camera, and I also was introduced to editing software. So I was obsessed with making things look good. I did different like text title templates. I did VFX, like basically everything. And I would be so excited to show this to my parents. And my dad, like, of course he was encouraging, but he would always ask me what the story is. And I would think he was crazy. I was like, why don't you think this is cool? This is awesome that I'm doing this. But I came to realize that he actually had a really good point. It's not enough to just create cinematic compilations or cool edits. You actually have to have substance, especially for people that are not filmmakers or photographers or whatever. They don't really care about the cool flashy stuff. They care about the substance. Like, think about it. You watch a TV show or you watch a movie. Why do you watch it? Is it for the cinematography? Maybe, but that's because you're a photographer. The reason most people watch it is because they follow the story. They follow the characters. Now, in the same way, on a micro scale, you can do the same for social media content. So every movie, every story has a 3-act structure. You have the intro, you have the main part of the plot, which is the rising action, the conflict, the falling action, all that kind of stuff. And then finally, you have the conclusion. So if we take this and smash it down to a smaller scale, for social content, you have a hook, which in its entire purpose is just to get someone to watch the video for longer than like 2 or 3 seconds. You have a payoff at the end that's very similar to a conclusion, and it just satisfies the person's interest for watching the video in the first place, which was the hook, and it entices them to watch more. And what's in between the hook and the conclusion, or the payoff, is the storyline or your engagement piece. So you can use different storytelling structures to be able to create more engagement throughout and to be able to increase your watch time. But ultimately, you end up using the same storytelling structures that they use in Hollywood to engage people. Now, the way that I learned how to do this personally was I just started creating stories for myself. So I would go out on adventures and I would just take a bunch of just cinematic footage or even phone footage, and I would put it together and I would try to create different stories with the same footage, just using voiceovers, using different text, whatever it might be, and see how many different stories I can create out of the same content. And you can kind of apply some similar concepts with photography. So like if you go on an adventure, do anything really, just whatever the peak moment is, just take photos of that and try to make the most engaging piece that actually tells a story. Now, after I had been doing this for a little while, I started to realize that some of these stories I created were starting to get like hundreds of thousands of views. So I realized that brands would actually be willing to pay a lot of money for somebody who could generate that kind of attention or that kind of viewership for them through video content. So I knew how to create content for myself that engaged people and actually got those views, but I didn't really know how to do it for brands. So the way I learned how to do that was I actually went to YouTube and I searched some of the top performing TV ads. I also just went on Instagram and figured out what kind of videos are actually going viral. And I started to synthesize a framework for how to actually create videos that hook people, that engage them throughout, and actually have a payoff, that structure that we were talking about before. And then based on that structure, I would create spec ads. I would just go to Walmart, I would get a product that maybe was trending or popular or whatever, and then I would create spec ads using the framework that I learned from some of the top performing ads. Now, this did 2 things. Number 1, I learned how to structure content that was designed to sell because I was modeling after content that people literally dumped thousands, sometimes even hundreds of thousands of dollars into. So they're not going to spend that kind of money on an ad if they don't think it has a good shot of being able to convert. And on top of that, number 2 is the examples that I was creating, the spec ads I was creating, were based off the frameworks that I learned through the top performing ads and viral videos. So automatically they were already positioned much better in terms of storytelling perspective effective than all the rest of the content that I had created. So now when I have my portfolio of spec work, it's actually based off stuff that is proven in the market versus just random things that I create. Now, once you've done this a few times and you have some examples and practice with creating engaging content, and you've probably even posted some of it yourself, and you get an idea and some feedback in terms of what actually works, then and only then can you move on to stage number 2, which is to get attention. Now, people severely overcomplicate this, and honestly, they try to get attention before they're even ready to because they don't know how to create videos that actually sell. But as a general rule of thumb, if you're trying to get attention and you have never gotten paid for a project, or you haven't gotten paid the amount you want to get paid by the types of client that you want to get paid by, then it's just a non-negotiable. You need to be doing work for free. Now, I know you probably just heard this and you're like, Nash, why are you promoting doing work for free? Well, it's because based on my own personal experience in the beginning, every single big brand project that I worked with, it was high 4 figures, multiple 5 figures, all started with a free project on the front end that I later transitioned into a paid project on the back end. So I led with the value up front, and as a result, because they liked what I produced, they were more willing to trust me to actually pay me money on the back end. Now, the other argument I hear is people are like, well, charge your worth. You should never give a client something for free that other people are charging money for. And I agree. If you can genuinely charge a certain amount for it, then you absolutely should not give it for free. However, what you also have to realize is that the value of something is determined by the amount of money somebody is willing to pay for it. So if you're pitching somebody a project and they're not willing to pay for it, and either one, it's not valuable to them, or number two, maybe it is valuable, but you don't have any proof that you can actually bring that value to them, which means that you just need to get more case studies that actually prove that you can get results for clients. So if you're out working for free just to get like a free vacation, some free products, whatever, that's like a really dumb reason to work for free. Don't do that. But if you're working for free for the strategic reason to get a case study that shows that you can get results for clients so that you can pitch people later on at higher rates, then that's when you want to choose to do work for free. So what you'll find most people do is that they'll do work for free to get portfolio or whatever, but a lot of times they don't actually know how that content actually worked for the brand. And this just goes back to storytelling and being able to create content that actually engages and converts people, because creating a compilation video doesn't really do much in the way of selling a product, an experience, a resort, anything like that. It might look cool, but that's about it. But if you can learn how to create content that has story and actual substance to it, then all of a sudden you are creating videos that actually drive conversions and actually get results for clients, which means that now you can actually get a case study. Now, a common problem I see a lot of people do at this stage is that they'll reach out to somebody like a Marriott or a Nike or Adidas or Yeti or some top industry titan that gets hit up every single day by like 50 other creators and want to do work for free for them. Now, that's not a bad thing. If you want to put it on your portfolio, great. But in terms of being able to get tangible results for a client for a case study, it's not the best. And the reason why is because they already typically have a really good content strategy. They typically already have a really solid marketing strategy. They're getting hit up by the best companies, the best agencies, the best freelancers in the world every single day. And they kind of have their pick of the litter of who to choose. Like, let's take Nike, for example. Instead of going for Nike, go for a lower level sports equipment manufacturer that maybe is in the $2 to $10 million range that wants to maybe aspire to be like Nike, but they're not even close to there yet. Because what's going to happen is you're going to be able to identify their content and create something much better and see drastically better results than you'll ever see through Nike, which means that you have a much better case study that you can leverage to get bigger clients in the future. So at this stage, maybe you've been doing these free shoots for the past few weeks, maybe even a month, and you have a few under your belt, which brings us to stage number 3, which is the conversion stage. Now, before you move on to this stage, you want to make sure that the client has actually used your content, they've actually posted it, used it on the website, whatever it might be, because if they haven't used it, this is kind of pointless. And you also want to make sure that if they have used it, that it's actually gotten outsized results compared to what they've used in the past, because if it hasn't, then chances are they're not going to want to pay you. But assuming that you do have decent results in terms of engagement, metrics, numbers, whatever, then you can send them an email and you can say something along the lines of, hey, looks like you guys have been deploying the content. Hopefully it's doing really well for you. I'd love to jump on a quick 10 to 15 minute content strategy call and walk you through some ideas I have for you guys moving forward. And to be honest, if you did a decent job, they're happy with the content, they probably will not be opposed to jumping on a call with you. So when you get on this call, your goal is really twofold. Number one is you want to ask them how the content's performing for them, what they think of it, how they're using it, all that kind of stuff, because you can use this as a case study and also potentially get a testimonial out of them. If they really like it, they might give you a quote or something that you can use. But number two is you want to use this as an opportunity for kind of like a discovery call, so you can understand what some of the problems are in the business and how you can actually solve those problems with your future content. So the types of questions you'll ask is just ask them about their business, maybe ask them about their content marketing strategy, what kind of ads they're running, how they acquire their customers, what the ROAS is, the return on ad spend on their current ads, why they feel like it is where it is, if they're happy with it. All these kind of just probing questions just to kind of get a vibe for their marketing strategy, how they acquire customers, what they're actively doing. And then from there, maybe you identify that there's a hole in their content marketing strategy. Maybe there's a certain benefit of their product that they're just missing out on, or a certain feature of the product that they don't have any content on, or just they need better content in general because it doesn't speak to the right people. Maybe they're getting a low return on their ad spend. Maybe they have a low conversion rate on their website, whatever it might be. It doesn't really matter. Just identify what that thing is, because now you can pitch them ideas for content that is going to actually solve that problem. And because they've worked with you at least at a small capacity before, you've built some trust with them, you've actually had a conversation with you, they're much more likely to hear you out and actually much more willing to jump on a follow-up call where you can pitch them a proposal of an actual paid project. And just for the record, at this stage, I'd rather charge a lower rate so I could secure the client and get an awesome case study than I would to maximize profit and charge like, let's say $5,000 a month or something like that. The client says it's too expensive, doesn't close, and therefore you don't get a case study. It's just going to take you much longer to grow if you don't have those case studies. So optimize for, yes, obviously getting paid, but also getting the client. Which brings me to stage number 4, which once you've closed the client, you just want to blow their mind. And I mean, I know this sounds obvious, but you want to be your client's favorite person to work with, both in your personality as well as the results that you bring, because inevitably, even in big companies, there'll be budget cuts, and you do not want to be the low man on the totem pole when that budget cut comes. So you got to make yourself a necessity for the brand so that you're not the first one to go. And how do you do that? Well, you just over deliver on expectations. So that might mean that you give them an extra video or two, but more likely than not, it means that you over deliver on the results that they were actually expecting. And you do that by creating better videos, which goes back to the whole idea of just storytelling. So you have to have the skill first and foremost to be able to create a video that engages, that piques interest, and ultimately converts random people on the internet into paid customers. And if you have that skill, the rest of it kind of falls in place. So that's how you go from being a hobbyist, videographer, photographer, content creator, whatever it might be, to somebody that a brand is willing to pay thousands of dollars for. So now that you have the blueprint of how to go from zero to your first few paid clients, chances are you don't want to stay in the do a free project and then upsell later cycle forever, which means that you need to have a better sales system. So check out this video where I show you my exact process for turning random strangers on the internet into high-paying clients for your content business.